Aloha! Welcome to my channel. I'm JayDreamerZ, and today our video is called Gender Gods or Gender Fluid Gods. Now, check this out. First, thank you all for showing up today. I want to do a disclaimer real quick because of the times that we live in, etc. This video is not going to be about my opinion on all of the things that are happening recently in our world, what I think is right, what I think is wrong, how I feel about that type of stuff, nor do I want to hear that from the chat or the comment section or anything like that. So please be respectful and above all, be kind. Okay, if you can't be anything else, be kind. So that's my little disclaimer to everybody. Thank you so much for showing up. I see everybody in the chat. Good to see you all. So check this out. What I'm going to start this, let's just jump right into it. Let's just jump right into it, right? The reason I want to make this video is because while doing my research here at home, I came across several different videos that were talking about gender fluidity and applied it to ancient myths, legends, and religion, taking examples from the past of gods that were, or goddesses, however you like to say it, that had both genders or were perceived as being both genders or had transitioned at some point in time from one gender to another gender. So that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to explain today, what that exactly is. So without any further ado, let's do some screen sharing and boom. All right, cool. So the first thing we're going to start off with is a quiz. Everybody in the chat, who knows who this is? Who is this? Somebody, I want to see who gets this first. Let's see how quick you guys are. Who is this? Let's see. I'm just checking out the chat real quick. Does anyone know who that was? This guy right here. I can't have the chat pulled up. Let me pop out the chat real quick. Hold on. All right, popping out the chat. Boom. I've got the chat popped out. Let me go back to my picture. And there we go. All right, who is this? Who is this? Somebody let me know. Okay, Stephanie got it first. Good job, Stephanie. All right, so this is Homer Simpson. All right, good job. Good job, everybody. Now, next question. Next question. Ready? What gender is Homer Simpson? What is this? What gender is that? All right. So I just want to see. I mean, just an honest answer. That's all. It's pretty simple, right? It's not a trick question or anything like that. What gender would you say Homer is? Okay, I'm actually lying. It is a trick question. All right. So if you had to choose, what would you choose? What would you say? Right? All right. We got Walking Ghost in the chat who says a man. Baby You Home says a male. Stephanie says male, 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 male. Everybody, it's pretty obvious, right? That it appears to be a male. However, you're all wrong, okay? Every single person that said that this is a male is incorrect. Just logically speaking and using our ability to use reason, I know this is not a male. This is a cartoon, okay? This is a drawing. Drawings cannot be male. They cannot be female. It's just a drawing. That's all it is, okay? Now, in our imagination, we imagine that this is a male, right? Because we project certain attributes onto him and we take certain symbolic attributes and stuff. And it's easier for us to talk about Homer Simpson as if we just say, oh yeah, he's a guy, he's a male, right? Oftentimes it's easier to just say things absolutely than to get into details about them. However, from time to time, I find it's good to get into those details so that we can have a clear and better understanding so we can build bridges to one another to improve our communication, right? Homer is not a male or a female. Homer is a cartoon. Okay, this right here is just a drawing, right? People have interpreted it as male and female because it's used, this drawing, this cartoonification of something that represents real life is neither male nor female, but it's just a cartoonification. That's it, right? Now, this video right here is actually the video that inspired this particular presentation. And this is a presentation from PBS, and it's called How Many Ancient Mythologies Defy the Gender Binary something, something, something. And it says right up there, gender fluidity. Now, this video has these two girls, or I don't know, whatever, these two people that are these two right here. And they're the ones that come right out swinging. Like, okay, there's all these examples of these gods and goddesses in the past that were totally gender, non-binary, and they were hermaphrodites, and they were this and they were that. And they're using these as examples to promote their own beliefs and ideals and things like that, their moral standards and all that type of stuff. They're using these ancient myths and legends in order to promote their own perceptions in the modern age. That's why I was like, wait a minute, you just came into my world now. Let's talk about the myths and let's talk about the legends, okay? Hold on, let me make my chat a little bit better. All right, cool. So let's talk about the myths and the legends. We're gonna hit on the main ones about these gender fluid gods. Were they really gender fluid gods? Now, the most popular one that people know of or have heard of, likely, is Hermaphroditus. Hermaphroditus. That's where we get the word hermaphrodite from. A human that is born with the biological parts of a male and a female, right? So where does that name come from? It's a combination of two names. It's Hermes, typically portrayed just like Homer is as a cartoonification, okay? He's portrayed as a male. He's portrayed typically as a male. Maybe not all the time, but typically that's his gender or whatever, right? Aphrodite embodies female aspects. That's typically how Aphrodite is portrayed. Hermaphroditus is the offspring of both Hermes and Aphrodite. And that's where the name comes from. Now, Hermaphroditus was not, according to the legend, born a woman or born a man and a woman, but actually was just born a regular old man, right? But that's a legend. That is the story. That is the cartoonification of ancient events that actually happened in our world, where survivors of an apocalyptic event witnessed plasmic discharge, cosmic and earthly plasmic discharge, and they interpreted those signs and those symbols and the way that the plasma was moving about, they interpreted it through their own perception filters, just like we do today, and they told stories. Inevitably, those stories and those characters that they saw up in the heavens when all of the plasma was waving about and moving about, they interpreted those as being male or female according to their own perception and according to their culture's perception, because these stories would grow from tribe to tribe and people would reiterate them and tell them again and again, right? So Hermes, let's start with Hermes. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, many of these gods and goddesses are the same god and the same goddess oftentimes. I also want to preface the rest of this by saying this is my personal perception filter. This is my walk, my path, my research that I'm sharing with you today. Okay, so hopefully you'll take what resonates. All right, so let's talk about Hermes first. Hermes was an Olympian god. I believe that the etymology of Hermes goes all the way back to Har, which means mountain, and then Mesh or Mez, which means up out of the water. So a mountain that protrudes up out of the water, a high and lofty mountain, a large mountain. Basically, it's Mount Meru. It goes by many different names, Mount Ida, Mount Meru, Mount Olympus, Mount Sinai, etc., and so on and so forth. There's millions of different of these sacred mountains that these gods are born on or in or come from, etc. Hermes is no exception. Neither is his son, Hermaphroditus. Now, Hermes is the Olympian god. His mother is Maya. Maya is the earth, right? Now, when it comes to the plasma apocalypse, there's always this cosmic wedding that happens. You'll notice this in these, if you study comparative mythology and you look at the myths and the legends, you compare one to the other, and you'll notice that they have lots of similarities in common. Oftentimes, it is a marriage between a sky god and an earth god. Goddess, god, whatever you want to look at them as being, it is the sky and the earth touching. Because their separator has been removed, the sky and the earth meet one another, and they kick in an apocalyptic event that has introduces all of these different chemicals into our world and stuff. So Hermes' mother was Maya. His father was, Maya. Let's see. Let me read it. Hermes was the Olympian god. His mother Maya was the daughter of Atlas. Atlas, or Atlas, is that god that holds up the sky, which we've talked about on my channel many different times. The blue beam of ionized oxygen, probably, that shoots up out of the earth every other cycle. It gets towards the top and it splits out. I'm going to show you some images. We're going to share lots of pictures here in just a minute. Hey, Gen 2 gone. Thank you. I appreciate you. All right, cool. So Maya was the daughter of Atlas. Whence he's called the Oh, so also he's also known as anybody who is the son of Atlas is also known as or called an Atlantides. Atlantides, right? This is also where the mythic country of Atlantis comes from because of the location, right? The location is very important. There's one specific location where these gods are born, where they were seen, where they emerged from, and it goes back into before our ancient records. It's antiquity that we have forgotten about, that's been removed from our records and forgotten by the general populace as we moved further and further away from our reset point. And the closer we get to that reset point, it seems to me that we live during a time of enlightenment for some, where the closer we get to that reset point, the more the energy is building up in our world and the more our world goes into flux energetically. So that's a main reason, I believe, why all of this crazy different stuff's happening in the world right now, why there's so many differing opinions and, new norms and stuff like that, is because the energy in our world, the physical, actual energy that brings things to life, including your spirit and your soul, and touches everything in our world, it is the energy of the world that is going into flux and it is changing. And that is an omen. And that is a sign that the world is heading into the next reset event, which is why these types of things that we're experiencing on a grand scale worldwide right now, why they're surfacing once again, because these things are all repetitive, because time is repetitive. All right, so let's check out Hermaphroditus. Hermaphroditus was the son of Aphrodite and Hermes. Because he was a son of Hermes and consequently a great-grandson of Atlas, he was also called an Atlantides. Okay, so that's the most popular one. Now check this out. Atlantides has also become recently, and I'm pretty sure you'll probably see this in the movies pretty soon, he became a superhero character. I think this is in maybe, what is this, the Marvel universe? It's whatever one, it's DC. Wonder Woman and Superman and Batman and all those people. In their universe, in the comic books, Atlantides, or Hermaphroditus, is now considered a type of superhero, or, in the comic books, helping out the superheroes and stuff like that, right? Here's an example right behind me. And it isn't something that they just made up. This does come from ancient history, okay? There was a god/goddess that was known as Atlantides. Hey, Lady Lukes, thanks for gifting the membership. Super appreciate it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to read the story about this particular individual god, goddess, however you like to use it, right? That's another thing too, is here on my channel, we don't get typically into politics or anything like that. So what I'm not going to do is we're not going to do any kind of like, trying to control people in the chat as to like the words that they're using. Just, this is like, pretend like my channel right now is like a warp zone into the 90s, because that's when I'm from. I'm from a different time, I guess you could say. But anyways, let's learn some more about the Atlantides and where the hermaphrodite god comes from, and whether or not it really was a hermaphrodite, like we have today in our world today, or anything that starts with the word trans, basically. Let's check it out. So this is going to go into Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a book that was written in the 1st century, looks like BC to 1st century AD. And I'm going to go ahead and read this. And this is the story of Hermaphroditus, how he became both man and woman. So listen closely to the story real quick. It's a short story. It says, "Hear how the magic pool of Salmachus found its ill fame, and why its strengthless waters soften and innervate the limbs that they touch." So there was this magical pool of water, right? A mystical pool. Oftentimes this is the same type of pool that regenerates people. It's seen as being a type of like a fountain of youth, basically, right? Now, I want you to keep this in mind. I would like you to, please. Oftentimes on my channel, when I discuss the land that was rumored to be, or said to be, and commonly known to be at certain points in our history, worldwide, the world across, okay? People knew there was land beyond the Arctic Circle, up at the exact middle of our world at the North Pole. This was a known fact the world across at various points in our history, okay? This wasn't like a random thing that some conspiracy theorists thought about in the past. It wasn't something that people thought because they were all dumb and stupid and hadn't traveled the world and hadn't met other travelers or anything. It was because there was land at the North Pole, okay? And as I've shown you that land and shown you these ancient maps of that land at the North Pole, there is always a few commonalities, right? One of those is being that it's circular and it's divided by 4 rivers, just like a little plus sign with a circle around it. But right at the middle of that plus sign, there is another body of water, which is a huge lagoon. It's a lake. And I've always talked about how I thought that's likely to be a crystal clear lake of water that you could just see super far down into it, very clear water. That comes up in this story. So check this out. All right, so there's this lagoon, and it says all people know its famous power, regenerative power, right? But few the cause. To Mercury or Hermes runs the tale, and Cytherea, or Venus/Aphrodite, a boy, Hermaphroditus, was born, whom in Mount Ida's caves the Naiades nurtured, which are basically nymphs, okay? Now, time out one more time. I just want to clarify, okay? From my perspective and my research, I see certain creatures and certain, especially mythic creatures, not all of the time, but quite often, that they are cartoonified versions of plasma phenomenon as it has entered into our world and taken on different sizes and shapes and forms and making different sounds, etc. And I believe that we're starting to see that return in our world today as people are seeing more lights in the sky light up and weird, strange sounds and trumpeting and screaming and weird stuff in the distance. That's electricity, right? I found that to be electricity. All right, so they're talking about this famous pond that has these well-known abilities. They talk about the birth of Hermaphroditus, who was born in Mount Ida's caves. Now, let's point this out. This is important, right? If you look up Mount Ida from the myths and the legends, right? Mount Ida is not one mountain, right, that a god was born in. It's actually 2 separate mountains that are known to be far apart from each other. 2 individual mountains that are collectively called one mountain because they're seen as being the exact same thing as each other, right? Now, in my research on my channel, as I present it, I talk about these being the anode and the cathode mountains on either side of the Garden of Eden, Hyperborea, or aka the lands at the middle at the North Pole, right? So these 2 mountain ranges are seen as being one, Mount Ida. And that's where Hermaphroditus was born, just like his father before him and probably all of their progeny before them. All right, so in his face, he showed father and mother. So he looked like his father and his mother and took his name from both. That does not mean that he was born a male or I mean, doesn't mean he was born a female or both or anything. He was very comely. He was very attractive, right? He had muscles and manly qualities, but he also had like a certain effeminate beauty to him, I guess you could say. In his face, he showed father and mother and took the name from both. Hermes, Aphrodite, Hermaphrodite. Then thrice 5 years passed. The youth forsook Ida, his fostering home, his mountain haunts. That's an interesting word to use because that's what spirits do, right? I know that, they apply that to people too, but we are spirits, okay? Eager to roam strange lands afar, to see strange rivers, hardships softened by delight. The towns of Lycia he reached at last, and Care's marching provinces. And there he saw a pool, a limpid, shining pool, clear to its very bottom. You see that? Clear to its very bottom. So a crystal clear lake. This literally is Camp Crystal Lake. This is physically, actually Camp Crystal Lake from the Friday the 13th movies. This is where you get Friday the 13th from. This is where you get the zombies coming back to life or the dead rising from their graves, Jason Voorhees, etc. This is all plasma apocalypse symbolism, which is also ancient Oblivion, our actual lost and forgotten history. No marsh reed, no barren sedge grew there, no spiky rush. The water was crystal clear, its margin ringed with living tuft, and verdure always green. Now, let me translate that because it's kind of old, right? All this means is that all the way around this particular crystal lake, everything was just alive. The plants and everything around it that was growing was green and beautiful. This is describing a type of Garden of Eden, which is appropriate because that's what it is. It says that a nymph dwelt there. Nymphs are typically found near the water, okay? And I've done a huge, a whole video on sirens and banshees and nymphs and all of these types of apparitions and ghost-like creatures that typically live near to the water. They're seen being near the water. They hear these sounds of these types of ghostly type creatures near the water. Sometimes they're seen as being crying near the water, or screaming, or laughing, or all kinds of different sounds that electricity can make, especially when it's on a grand scale and not a small scale. All right, so there was a nymph near the water, not one to bend the bow, or join the hunt, or run to win the race. She was the only of the Naiades unknown to the swift Diana, or Artemis. Diana is also a goddess of wisdom. Diana is the goddess of the moon. Many of these types of gods and goddesses, they might go by different names. They might be cartoonified in different ways, but oftentimes they are representing the exact same place where the energy comes up out of the earth, and time again, because it comes up and then it retreats, it retracts, it goes back down into the earth, and then it's born again. And then when it's born again, it's given a new name by, people 1,000 years later or whatever, who forgot about it, didn't know what it was or whatever, and they describe it in a new way. According to how they see that cosmic plasma up in the sky, they interpret it as being male or female, and how it acts and how it moves and sways about in the sky dictates and tells the story that they will pass on to future generations. It goes on and says, many a time her sisters chide her, so they made fun of her. Come, Salmachus, get out your spear or painted quiver, vary your hours of ease with hardships of the chase. So this particular nymph was not interested in hunting or trying to hunt people down or anything like that. She was just chill and wanted to just chill in her little lake or whatever. Yet, no spear she ever took, nor painted quiver. Sage, hey, good to see you, Sage. Nor would vary her house of ease with hardships of the chase, but her pool would bathe her lovely limbs, and with a comb of boxwood dress her hair, and gazing long took counsel of the waters what style were the best. So basically she was known to stay at this particular location, never leaving it, which is another thing that you will notice. For example, like gods like Atlas. Atlas pretty much stayed in his spot because he's stuck there, right? He's stuck in one spot because he comes up out of the earth, and he literally grows up out of the earth, right? All right, now on the soft green grass or on the soft leaves in gauzy dress, she laid down. Now gathers her flowers, and while she's gathering flowers, she happened to see a boy, and seeing the boy, she saw her heart's desire. So she's doing her thing, she looks up and she sees this boy, Hermaphroditus, right? She falls in love, she falls in lust, however you want to say it, she wants that boy. So let's see what happens. Yet, though her heart would haste, she paused a while. So she waited a bit, dress inspected, so she made sure she looked okay. When everything was in order, charm in her eyes set shining. She deserved to look so lovely, and then she began to speak. So she got herself all ready to go talk to this guy. She was nervous or whatever, and then she went and talked to him. She says, "Fair boy, how worthily you seem, a god. And if a god, Cupido, love, Eros, himself." Which, by the way, the god of love also is often portrayed, or sometimes is portrayed as a hermaphrodite type of a god, okay? Where was I? A god, and if a god, Cupid himself. Or if a mortal, happy pair are they who gave you birth. Blessed is your brother, blessed indeed is your sister, if you have one, and the nurse who suckled you, but far, far more blessed is your betrothed, or your wife. found worthy of your love. And if there is no wife, let stolen joy be mine. If none, let me be her. Make me your bride. So she insisted that this guy marry her, right? Now listen to his reaction. This said, she held her peace. So she confessed her love at first sight, walks right up to this total stranger, and what do you think that he might have said, right? A rosy blush dyed the boy's cheeks. He knew not what love was, but blushes well became him. Like the bloom of rosy apples hanging in the sun, or painted ivory, or when the moon glows red beneath her pallor and the gongs resound in vain to rescue her eclipse. So basically she's throwing a lot of compliments his way, and she's, letting him know that she's interested. And he's blushing about it. He doesn't know what to do. Then the nymph pleaded and begged and besought at least a sister's kiss. So now she's trying to trick him into getting closer. Which is actually, that's right in line with nymphs and these types of creatures that we're talking about, where they were said to like lure in the sailors and whatnot, right? To try to get them in. But when they got them in, they had to wrestle with them and grapple them, and sometimes people died. And he made to throw her arms around, she made her arms to throw around his ivory neck. Enough, he cried. Have done, or I shall quit this place and you. So he says, get off me. Get off me. What the hell are you doing, man? Get off me. You can't do all that. So fear struck her heart. I yield the place, she says. Stranger, to you. And she turned away as if to leave him. So she's like, all right, fine, whatever. So she leaves, right? But she doesn't really leave. She actually goes behind some bushes and hides and spies on him. Now, with many a backward glance, she vanished in the leafy undergrowth and crouched in hiding right there. The boy thought he was alone on the empty sward, unobserved, strolled to and fro in the rippling water, dipped first his toes and then ankle, and soon, charmed by the soothing coolness of the pool, stripped his light garments from his slender limbs. Then Salmachus gazed spellbound, and desire flamed for his naked beauty, and her eyes blazed bright when the sun's unclouded orb shines dazzling in a mirror, just like the sun. She scarce could bear to wait, hardly postponed her joy. She longed to embrace him, scarce contained her frenzied heart. So he clapped his hollow palms against his side, and he dove into the pool, and as he swam arm over arm, gleamed in the limpid water like a guarding dome of crystal glass. White lilies, or a figure of ivory. I've won. He's mine, she cried, because the moment he gets into the water, now he's going to belong to her. Because these creatures, they live around the water, right? So that's sort of their territory. She flung aside her clothes and plunged far out into the pool and grappled him, and as she struggled, forced her kisses, willy-nilly fondled him, caressed him, now on one side, now on the other. She clung to him as he fought to escape her hold, and so, at last, entwined with him, like a snake. That's plasma. Like a snake seized by the king of birds and borne aloft, which, as it hangs, coils round his head and claws with its tail entwined his spreading wings, or ivy wrapping round tall forest trees, or in the sea a squid whose whipping arm seizes from every side and surrounds its prey. So this nymph is being compared to snakes and squids and other types of animals that are very fluid-like and move like serpentine in fashion, right? Because they're actually plasma. They're plasma phenomenon that is being cartoonified, just like Homer Simpson was cartoonified, right? Or represents some form of reality, but it in and of itself, the story is just a cartoon version of it, right? All right, so Atlantides, or Hermaphroditus, fought back, denied the nymph her joy. She strained more and more. Her clinging body seemed to fix fast to his. Fool, fight me as you will, she cried. You will not escape. Ye gods ordain no day shall ever dawn to part us twain. So she's saying like, hey, I'm gonna pray to the gods while I'm holding on to you that they make us one. Okay, so this plasma and this human type god creature boy or whatever, she's praying that they become one. What else? Her prayer found gods to hear, so the gods listened to her prayer. Both bodies merged into one. Both blended in one form and face. Now, take note. This is not that anybody was born with two sexual organs or anything like that. This is a cartoonification of a female type entity and a male type entity that wrapped around each other and became one, okay? As when a gardener sets a graft and sees growth seal the join and both mature together, thus when the fast embrace their limbs were knit, they too were two no more. No man. Oh, mind's eye, right on, thank you. They were not two any longer. They were not man nor woman. They were one body then that neither seemed and both. So they were basically became one creature or one person that was a man and a woman in this story, right? Cartoonified as a man and a woman. So when she saw the waters of the pool where he had dived, a man had rendered him half woman, and his limbs were now weak and soft. Raising his hands, Hermaphroditus cried, his voice unmanned, "Dear father, Hermes, and dear mother Aphrodite, both of whom's names I bear, grant me your child, that whoso in these waters bathes a man emerge half woman, weakened instantly. Both parents here, both moved to gratify their bisexed son, his purpose to ensure drugged the bright water with that power impure." So basically he's crying out to his mom and dad saying, hey, look what happened to me, etc. And they talk about the power that this water has. Okay. This is the water. This is the lake that surrounds Mount Meru, traditionally speaking. All right, cool. So that is the official story of Hermaphroditus or Hermaphroditus, Atlantides, etc. Now let's talk about a theory that I have, which I very much enjoy because it sounds reasonable and rational to me as I have studied. Now this right here is also a cartoonification. Okay, so I'm going to share this with you. Hold on, let me grab this picture. So I'm going to use this as an example to expound upon what is happening right here, right? Now, there is according to, if you're new, I'm super sorry. I'm trying to throw out little breadcrumbs to help catch you guys up to, where we're studying here in my channel. But essentially we have earth energy, right? We have these cycles of cataclysm that happen where the energy is sucked down into the earth during one season, which is what we are in right now. And we go through famines and we go through sicknesses and entropy increases exponentially in our world and sin enters into the world, etc. And then we have the other season or the other era or the new age that comes after the next apocalyptic cycle, which is where all of that stored energy or charged up energy leaves inside of the earth and shoots outwards towards the surface, right? Emerging in beams the world across. Anywhere that there is a cavernous system that goes down into the depths of the hollow parts of our earth, beams of light shoot out of those places. Poles, which is why cities were built around those places of power. And they call them polises or cities, right? Like metropolis, a metropolis, right? That's where that comes from. People saw these and they built their cities around them because where these poles were was where an abundance of energy and life could be found. All right, so that's just a little, quick recap so that you can become familiar with the pole that shoots up out of Mount Meru at the top of the world. The largest opening in our world gives rise to the tallest, mightiest, most titanic beam that shoots up and appears to be holding up the sky itself, surrounded, keep in mind, by other smaller beams acting as witnesses and otherworldly creatures that surround Mount Meru, including the anode and the cathode mountain. All right, cool. So now that we have that understanding, here is an artist's rendition of what may have been seen, or a type of thing that may have been seen in the ancient sky thousands of years ago at Mount Meru, looking directly north towards the magnetic north, right? They would have seen at first. Now, keep in mind, I want to back it up. I'm going to back it up, because this is what they saw after a time, when that beam that you see right next to me. Okay. Right here next to me, this is a drawing of a type of petroglyph that is found the world across. Okay. This is called affectionately the squatter man. Looks like somebody holding their hands up, and squatting, basically. Okay. It's a plasma formation. This above it is the actual plasma formation that has been recreated in the lab time and time again in order to manipulate the plasma, or that beam of plasma, to see how it unfolds and to see what other shapes it takes as it starts to develop currents and eddies and Z-pinches and all this other stuff that happens to plasma. Okay. So at first, all you have is a pole. All the ancients would have seen is a single beam of light that shoots straight up into the sky at first, right? Over time, that beam of light, it's a fluid. Okay, so this is the fluidity of the gods, okay? Because they literally are fluid. They are actually physically a fluid, which is plasma, right? And they move about in another fluid, which is our atmosphere. Okay, so you have to imagine, when you have a fluid in a fluid, it's going to look like it's dancing and waving about and doing all kinds of interesting things. Body parts are going to appear and then disappear as the plasma changes in the sky. Right? So at first you start off, you have a beam. That beam shoots straight up. That beam hits the firmament, or it conforms to whatever is in the sky above us, wrapping around it, giving us these arms, or the top to the grail, or a holy grail type of looking cup, or something like that, right? This can be interpreted as many different things. Like, it doesn't have to look like a squatter man. This right here can look like a face, right? An eyeball, a nose. It can look like an owl. I'm actually going to show you an example of how it looks like an owl as well. All right, so this is the fluidity of the god, the main god, the god of earth, the main god. And I use the word God loosely, okay? Some people say little g, etc. I'm not talking about the creator of everything in the fractal verse. I'm not talking about the entirety of the mind of God. I'm talking about cosmic and terrestrial plasmic discharge that is seen and called a mighty one, or a god. Okay, so that's just clarifying on my side. That's all. All right, so the ancients would have looked to the north and they would have seen something that resembles this. Now, on either side, you see how there's these little toroidal balls. Okay, so what this is this is the current of that central beam. As it shoots out, the current branches out, and that current branches out and creates like a sort of donut shape around it. The taller this beam is, right, and the longer that it goes for, the more of these little toroidal fields or donut shapes you will see stacked along that central column or pillar or beam, which gives rise to other types of cartoonification. For example, Jacob's ladder. Some people see it as like a ladder that goes into heaven, a beanstalk or a plant of some sort, a reed that is growing up into the heavens, etc., and so on and so forth, right? The little star at the top there, that's representative of the depressurization point in our sky. So that would literally be a hole in the sky. Or inversely, well, I'm just going to keep it simple. So that would be where the sky depressurizes, basically, because it will one day. And then down here, you can see that they have like petroglyphs. People, survivors, right? Boom, they wake up after the apocalypse, or maybe they're already awake, and they're seeing all these major changes. The most important event that has ever happened in any of their lives and in any history that they have ever even heard of or considered. This is like fiction. This is fantasy for most people coming to life, that they have stepped into an entirely different world, an entirely different plane of existence. And now they need to record this. They're going to draw this out. They don't know how long it's going to last for. They don't know how long it's going to be there for. So in their caves where they're hiding for safety from the apocalypse itself, right? It's not like these are the cavemen of times past. Okay. Unfortunately, schools teach that cavemen were just proto humans, and that they were late forms of monkeys and apes, and you know what I mean? Like they make them look stupid and uneducated. I mean, many of us are going to become cavemen or cave women because we will retreat to caves and stuff like that to seek shelter from phantazoids, otherworldly creatures, and all of the different things that are happening, the changes that are happening in our world, so that we can have a place of safety, a little house to call our own from the elements and from the creatures that are going to be introduced into our world, okay? So cavemen, I don't believe cavemen were stupid or anything like that. And I don't like that they're portrayed in that manner. It's a cartoonification as well, right? Just like the Flintstones or something, which is why the Flintstones have modern technology. They just use what they had available to them because the Flintstones were survivors of an apocalyptic event. That's my perspective, and I'm sharing it with you. All right, cool. So this is what the ancient people saw, right? Now, I want you to keep in mind, just using this image right here, Mind's Eye. Hey, thanks, Mind's Eye. Super appreciate you. Now, look at this plasma discharge image in the sky. You have to keep in mind, right? And there's going to be other pillars that surround this thing too. So this is the artist rendition. I think I love all of these types of artwork that I see on the internet where people are drawing these plasmic cosmic discharges or terrestrial discharges. It's interesting to me because I feel like most people feel like this discharge actually comes from the sky when it does not. The tentacles come from the sky, okay? All that swirling red plasma that comes on down, that comes from the sky. But the blue plasma, affectionately, right? It's white, it's baby blue, however you want to describe it, sometimes greenish. It comes up from the earth. This is a cosmic wedding, and they're both there. You have the tentacles and the mini heads that come down from above and descend from above, which eventually become the fingers of God that are cut off once the electromagnetic barrier goes back up. And then you have that solid beam that shoots straight up into the sky. Okay, this is the cosmic wedding of both. Now, keep in mind, this is only one perspective, okay, that you're looking at right now. This is from these people's perspective right here, wherever they happen to be in their location, their exact coordinates on the earth. Let's just say that they're pretty close. Let's say that this is, I don't know, Greenland, okay, and that these two are ancient humans a long time ago that lived in Greenland, and this is how they saw it. But if I were to show you this exact same perspective from somebody in Australia, right? The horizon would seem to go up much higher, cutting off the bottom part of this cosmic creature or this cosmic being, you could say. Essentially, they can't see the legs. They can't see the bottom half. They can't see whatever perceived or projected genitalia that this so-called God may or may not have on the lower parts. However, what they can see from very far away are these dots, these little toroidal circles right there, right? Which, let me see what else I got here. So here's an example. Oh man, all up in my face. All right, hold on. Let me just scoot you over a bit here. All right, so this is another example, okay? Soren! Hey, Soren. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate you, Soren. Good to have you. And Unlearn the System. It's good to see you in the chat as well. All right, so this is one example. There are thousands upon thousands of this exact same formation, this exact same petroglyph that is found the world across in caves, on rocks, in lava, all over the place. Excuse me. So, as you can see, typically they have the leg formation. The legs are the bottom of the squatter man itself, right? So if I take you back over to more examples of the squatter man image of the plasma beam that shoots up, right? These legs are the anode and the cathode on either side, mountains that jut up out of the Arctic Ocean, as we talked about, Hermes, up a mountain up out of the ocean, Hermes, basically. Now, 3 mountains would be Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes the Thrice Great, okay? All right, so we've got one leg anode, one leg neutral, or the one that comes up out from Mount Meru, and the other one, the cathode, right? The anode and the cathode mountains release their beams first. They start going up into the sky as the energy builds and builds and builds, because it's got to fill up the entire cavernous area within Mount Meru, which is very large, which is Cycros Cave and the Cave of Jesus and the Cave of Zeus and all these different Cave of Treasures, Cave of Wonders. It's humongous, right? So that one takes a long time to fill up, and it's the last one to be seen. So you have the anode and the cathode, which herald the coming of the Christ-like figure or the central beam, okay? Now, the anode and the cathode, as they are going, eventually start becoming attracted to one another as their currents and their eddies of plasma start flowing about. They are attracted to one another. The anode and cathode, they want to touch. They want to, right? When that central beam shoots up, it becomes the bridge between the two. The anode and the cathode create an electrical arc. Boom! Creating the legs of the squatter man figure, right? Mount Meru shoots up all the way up to the top, hitting the the inner dome or the depressurization point in the sky, which gives you sort of a head or whatnot. Sometimes they don't see the head, and it's the headless figure, you know, headless horseman type figure and stuff like that. Now, let's look at these circles, okay? These circles are interpreted as different things as people draw their version of Homer Simpson whenever they're drawing and carving out. Also keep in mind that they had to carve a lot of this stuff. So these lines are nice and smooth because we're drawing these. This one's nice and smooth because it's actual plasma over here on the right, that purple one. But these ones over here, if we look at these, like for example, this United Arab Emirates petroglyph, the legs are very straight and jaggedy, so are the arms, etc., because they're drawing on rock. I don't know if you've ever tried to carve your name into rock, but it's very difficult to draw like smooth, rounded edges and stuff like that into rock, especially if you're in a hurry. You're just chipping away, and it's going to be very angled lines, okay? So that's why the legs are oftentimes very angled like that, how you see. Oftentimes between the legs, you will see that little central beam, which understandably is interpreted as a male body part, right? Now, they can't always see that, as we talked about before. One thing that they do see are these little toroidal balls on either side that look like they're underneath the armpits of the squatter man figure, which is why when we read and we study ancient Norse mythology and legends from ancient northern countries and stuff, they talk about how the creator god actually created everything from under its armpits, that things literally just dropped out from underneath its armpits, which things do because this plasma interacts. It's moving rapid at high speeds, and it's going to interact. The ionized oxygen within that plasma beam is going to interact with the nitrogen that's in our atmosphere and the other elements that are in our atmosphere, and it's going to create little byproducts that rain down on top of our world. Okay, so this is a huge creation event. It's a chemical romance, okay, you could say. Now, these two dots, let's go back to these two dots right here. Now, these two dots are not always there. In addition, these legs are not always there. Oftentimes, one leg will be missing. So either the anode or the cathode leg, I can't remember which one off the top of my head right now. I have to go back and restudy it. But one of those becomes stronger than the other one. So one of them is seen as disappearing while the other one almost reaches all the way over to finish the electrical arc on its own, right? So the one that is diminished is seen as having been the god that died and goes down into the underworld to recharge once again before it makes its appearance again, right? As that happens, one of these legs disappears. On one of these circles will also disappear, right? So let me see if I have a good example of this. I'll come back to that one. All right, so I don't really have an example of this, but anyways, these two balls, they don't have to stay there. They're seen in some of these petroglyphs, but not all of them. All of these examples right here have, it looks like they all have the two balls underneath the arms, right? But not all of these petroglyphs always have them. Sometimes it's just one. One of these balls is present because it's plasma. It can disappear and it can reappear, right? Depends on what it's doing at its source, right? So when one of these balls disappears, when this god or goddess, however people perceive it through their perception filters, when it is seen as a female, that ball on the chest of the female is seen and interpreted as being a breast. So when it has one breast, it is known as an Amazon or without breast. Okay, it's an Amazonian. That's where the Amazonians come from. And whenever both of them disappear, basically they interpret it as being more masculine or a male god, etc. But this is typically seen as a female goddess. It's the goddess of wisdom. Whatever attributes this plasma brings to our world are the things that we attribute to the cartoonification and the stories that we tell of that phenomenon. Okay, if that makes sense, right? Basically, we interpret, if it looks like a boy, we're going to tell a story about this boy god. If it looks like a girl, we're going to tell a story about this girl god. And if it looks like it's transitioning between the two, guess what story we get? Hermaphroditus, right? So here's the example. I want to share this real quick too. So this is imagery that was taken in a lab of plasma tests. It says the Z-pinch high energy plasma discharge that is seen in the ancient skies as an owl eyes, or the squatter man, recorded by man as petroglyphs and myths. So here's what was done in the laboratory, and this is just a small version. Keep that in mind too. And then this is what it looks like whenever you plot it out, right? It looks like those two balls create the eyes of the owl, okay, or an owl figure, because it's resonating as it goes out, okay? So you actually can see the eyes of the owl, or the central eyes, or the balls that are in the chest or whatever, or the breasts of the female god or whatever, and then it resonates as it goes out, which to some looks like an owl, which is why these when this blue beam is interpreted as being a female, okay, that female is the goddess of wisdom, and oftentimes is accompanied by an owl, right? These things that accompany these gods and goddesses oftentimes are more representative of the gods and the goddesses than the actual figure itself, right? So if you see a god with like a staff, like Hermes is a perfect example, with his little staff that has the snake on it and stuff, that staff embodies the qualities of Hermes as a god figure more than the actual humanoid figure that has a toga or whatever, okay? So it is their weapons, it is their tools, it is their staffs and their magic wands and all this stuff that actually embodies the qualities of these gods and these goddesses. It is not that they were physical humans, okay? Just like there's people out there that will say like, well, Jesus actually wasn't really a man, or whatever they believe, that the story of Jesus was not about an actual human that was named Jesus, etc., right? Which is not up for debate right now in this video or anything, but I'm just using that as an example, right? Same type of deal. These are plasmic phenomenon, okay? This is plasma discharge that is terrestrial plasma discharge from the earth itself, shooting straight up into the sky, and it takes on different forms and images, which are interpreted by us, right? So these gods, these goddesses were not male. They were not female in the traditional way that they had a physical body part that embodies masculinity or female, right? They were not born physically male with flesh and blood or anything like that. For me, and there's exceptions and anomalies, but in general and for the most part, right? Those strictly male and those strictly female gods and stuff. And another thing, they didn't have sex with animals. Okay, these gods and goddesses, people interpret some things a bit too literally at times, and other times not literal enough, right? So they weren't out there having sex with animals. Zeus didn't actually turn into a physical swan and rape some girl because that's what the Greek gods did. You know what I mean? These are stories. These are cartoonifications. They were not actually physically born with certain genitalia or anything like that. So to use that as an example in the modern age is a poor example. Okay, it's further away from the truth, when the reality is that, if anything, the only qualities of male or female that this beam exhibits is its energetic quality. Okay, positive and negative. And I will tell you that this one has all of it, right? It's got an anode, a cathode, and a neutral point. And that is my presentation. What do you guys think? I hope you had a good time. All right, sweet. Well, I know it was a short one. Feel free to leave as many comments as you like. I have enjoyed all of your time here today. Be kind in the comments. And if you're a moderator and there's some crazy comments, this is not a place for allowing our passion to rule our reason, okay? One of my favorite books is called The Wizard's First Rule. And in that book series, every book in that series gives one of these rules that a wise wizard offers his protege to live by, right? And one of those rules is to remember that passion rules over your ability to reason. So it is a caution, okay? It is a cautionary form of guidance to say, be careful in becoming so zealous and so overzealous sometimes that your passion rules over your ability to reason things out, or even worse, rules over your ability to be kind to others, right? Now, remember, we live during strange and interesting times, right? Which means that there's something right around the corner. Change is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's happened once. It will happen again. It's happened in our past. The past is destined to return and to repeat itself. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.